I just want to briefly talk about this because I think that these are the right people to tell about it. I don't know how his name is pronounced yet, but you guys are going to know, I think, what I'm talking about. The Don Dohler movies? Is it Dohler or Dollar?
I've never heard anyone actually say it, so I just assumed it was Dohler.
Okay, I think it's Dohler. One of them was a Mystery Science Theater long ago, and I saw that one. I didn't really have any context. I've gone through the first half of his filmography, and I am in heaven right now. Have you seen those?
I've seen one that has like a kind of nice little connection to the movies we'll be talking about later on. What's it called? Like the Alien Factor? The one that has like that monkey looking alien?
Fuck yes.
Yeah.
Alien Factor.
I think that's the only one I've seen.
Yes.
It was good though.
There's this thing about these Don Dohler movies where he makes one movie over and over. They're all the same movie, and he uses the same actors.
Like Neil Breen.
It's honestly, it's proto Breen. You're not wrong. And he'll use the same actors, and you'd think movie to movie, like you'd be able to see him progress and get better and make better choices and different choices. No, not at all. It's wild. And they've become like this comfortable thing where it's like, okay, let's go to the next Dohler. Oh, there's the scientist, there's the guy, there's the biker guy. Like it's just the same guys every time. The only one that's a little different so far is Fiend from 1980, and I really enjoyed Fiend. I would love a Fiend remake with Matt Berry as the Fiend. That's my 2 cents.
You would say Michael Shannon.
Oh, I want him as the tall man. Spoilers.
He can be both.
He could be the Fiend, baby. I highly recommend watch all these Don Dohler movies because they're great, but The Fiend I'm just still thinking about. It's been a couple of days now, so that's usually a good sign.
Yeah. I've been watching a bunch of things that honestly aren't very good. But, Dead Heat, Body Parts I threw in there, which has been covered on at least one of our shows.
Sure.
And I finally saw Christine for the first time.
Did you like it?
I loved it. I would put it towards the top of the Carpenter films I've seen. That's actually like the last canonically good Carpenter film that I hadn't seen. And I just never watched it because it honestly didn't seem very interesting to me.
I totally get it. Absolutely. I have a friend who was, I was like, dude, we got to watch Christine. He's like, I'm not watching a car movie. It's a killer car movie? I don't think so.
I love car movies though, but for whatever reason, I'm just like, I don't care about Christine.
Right.
But once you see it on fire, chasing people down, you're in.
Have you seen The Strangers 2?
No.
A great Christine reference. A great Christine reference in The Strangers 2. I think The Strangers 2 is good. I'm here to go to bat for that movie. It's a good slasher. It's like a Carpenter movie. It's like, what if Carpenter made a different Strangers movie? And I like it better than the first Strangers, kind of by a lot.
I mean, I did not like the first one.
I was trying to be
any
nice.
Movie
I agree.
Where you blow a 1-0 shotgun lead. I mean,
you're right.
Now,
you're just right.
I still have, was it In the Mouth of Madness and Village of the Damned left of like his, pre-vampire.
So Village of the Damned is not canonically good. Everybody seems to fucking hate that movie, but I love it.
Okay.
It's not bad. It's fine.
It was one of those, like, it's on TBS or TNT or USA all the time. So I watched it a lot growing up, and I like it. Everyone shits on it, but, Christopher Reeve, Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
It's a good movie.
All right. But Christine, it weirdly feels like every time I've seen it, it seems like Carpenter's most, like, character-driven movie.
I would absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you're actually kind of good at this, man. Why don't you...
Maybe that comes from the source material, but he's working off Stephen King.
But I feel that have you read the book? Because I feel the movie's better than the book, I think.
I mean, it probably is just a perfect storm because a lot of the book adaptations of Stephen King that are more faithful, I am kind of like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dead Formats, a movie podcast where each episode we pilfer the mausoleum of cinema and resurrect a dead format in the form of a killer dwarf to provide us with cheap labor on our barren red planet. or something along those lines. I'm your host, Chris, and this episode we're going to be discussing Jorge Torres's fan edit of the Phantasm franchise, Phantasm Revision. Today I'm joined by two very special guests who may or may not have died in a car wreck. It's a hell of a way to start a trio. Bones, DK, welcome. How are you guys doing this evening?
Doing great.
Fantastic, but it's spelled P-H-A.
Yeah. And I've never died in a car wreck. Now, I do flip a car every 5 years.
Yeah, well,
but
so
I walk away every time.
People see you post on Facebook and ask themselves, wait, didn't he die in a car wreck?
Just flipped it. Every once in a
years.
while they blow up. Every once in a while.
I thought that only happened in the movies, Bones.
Oh, shit.
You, Bones, you are 1/3 of the 5 Day Rentals podcast, and DK, you are 1/2 of Nerds, Geeks, in the Kitchen Sink. Please, fellas, tell the listeners a little about what you guys do.
Boy, we talk about your Marvel movies and your comic books and I do a lot of horror stuff. I cover a lot of it really is the kitchen sink. Like I kind of cover whatever the hell I want. So you get a lot of that stuff. We do tend to cover all the big movies that come out in the year. But I really do focus on the horror stuff and kind of deal with my co-hosts just talking about Disney all the time. So it's an interesting mix. But the real good show here is 5 Day Rentals, Bones.
Please. Yeah, like you said, 1/3. I would say I'm the earth of 5DR. Dan, maybe the air, Kron the fire.
I thought you were going with planets.
No,
because
there's
Dan is
heart
Uranus.
is nowhere close. Yeah, we're 3 white guys talking about movies, but try to put our own little spin on it. My joke the whole time has been that it's never been about the movies, but yeah.
I mean, I
look
wouldn't say that's a joke. I would say it's a fact. I have watched maybe 1 or 2 movies based on listening to your show, and I've listened to every single episode. So
it's a great show. It's a show that I have to listen to every week. I have to. It's great.
Yeah, it's a must. So as I mentioned, I've brought these two on here to talk about Phantasm Revision, which is all 5 films in the Phantasm franchise edited down into one 90-minute film. So it should go without saying that by necessity, there are going to be spoilers for all 5 films throughout this discussion. But before we got into that, I was curious, what are your histories with the Phantasm franchise? And I'll let you start, DK, because you probably have the longest one.
I'll make it brief. I saw it, I don't know what year, but I saw it with a friend pretty young, and it really affected me in a great way. I was scared. It was kind of like sci-fi in some way. I was trying to figure out, like, what the hell did I just see? It starts with boobs. Like, it's got everything you want, right? Lots of blood, a mystery that is just really interesting. It's seared into my brain forever is Reggie putting his hands over the forks and me and just that hum and the white room and just trying to figure out, like, what is this? Like, how did this even happen? So for me, top franchise, only second to probably Evil Dead for me. Phantasm, I have the box set right here. I'm a huge fan. I rewatch them all the time. They're just always on. They're my comfort movies. Reggie Bannister has been done a disservice by history. He needs to be celebrated as much as Bruce Campbell, at least. The Ash character, I could not say enough, and I could talk all day, and we might do that about Phantasm and why it's the best. So yes, humble beginnings in my friend's basement to now.
Beautiful. Bones?
Franchise I was kind of aware of. I just thought it was something like a Candyman or a Wishmaster. Sort of, lower shelf horror that, they would pop out one every few years. Really couldn't tell you anything about it until, DK and I started to kind of cycle around each other for a while. And then, slowly our orbits got closer and closer. And then you realize, like, wow, he really likes this fucking thing. And he would first time we hung out, like he mentioned, like, dude, you gotta, all right. So much so that he did the Reggie touching the, when I dropped him off, you know, there were
completely forgot about that.
The secure, you know, like the security, like pyres or whatever. He grabbed two of them and shook like, this will make sense in a week when you watch it. So I checked it out, had an absolute blast. And when it was time for 5DR to do a season 2 box set, I pitched it and pushed it. And I was so happy to watch it and go through it, but equally as mad that I had gone this far into my life without experiencing it, because it taps into just the absolute, just throw everything that you can. What is in your head at the time of writing this script? The nostalgia is nuts. So this was, as frustrating as this edit might have been, it was just such a blast to go through. And I would actually argue, I think I'm taking Reggie over Ash.
That doesn't hurt me.
Yeah.
So
I agree with you in some ways.
I think Army of Darkness alone puts Ash ahead.
Okay.
I think just that one is good enough.
It's just that Reggie hasn't been given the chances. That's what I'm saying.
He has more movies. He's been given 5 chances.
Yeah, but he's not the lead really until even part 2. I don't know. We can get into it.
Yeah. So my first encounter with Phantasm is there was a DVD released in 2001 that was called Boogeymen, the Killer Compilation. And what this was just a DVD that had like individual scenes from a bunch of horror movies. And one of those was Phantasm. It was the scene where we get our first, the caretaker guy gets drained by the silver ball, and it ended with Mike cutting off the tall man's fingers. But I didn't actually sit down and watch the movie until way, way later, probably like when I was in my mid-20s or so. And then it's very convenient that I have exact dates for this, because September 24th, 2016, the 4K restoration hits theaters. So I went and saw that.
Oh.
And then shortly after that, I found out that Phantasm Ravager was coming to theaters on October 7th. So we spent the weekend before that watching the other 4 so that we could understand what was going on in Ravager. So I've seen that one in theaters as well. And I thought it was a very interesting series, but I haven't really had the opportunity to revisit it until now, because my significant other hates it because of having to watch all of them in such rapid succession.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this, in preparation for this, was only the second time that I've seen 4 and 5. The first time I saw those was 8 years ago.
Now,
doing them all at once could be tough. I totally agree. If it's not your thing, maybe to begin with, or if it's just too much, I completely get that.
It is a lot.
Yeah. And particularly the nature of this franchise, where things seem to be repeating and then canceling over each other. And then we say this, but then you see this, and I completely get it.
Yeah. So.
And suffered recasting and who's available and what money do they have?
Sure.
You know, makes for a bummer.
Yeah, I wish I remembered more about the specific experience of seeing, because Ravager has to be like the lowest budgeted movie that I've ever seen in an actual movie theater. I wish I remembered more about like her instant reaction to seeing like basically a direct to DVD movie in theaters.
The reaction to seeing a horse get drained.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I watched this a couple times this week. So on Letterboxd now, my most watched films are Phantasm, Scent of a Woman, Billy Madison, and Phantasm 3.
Oh, hell yeah. Bookended.
I'm wondering, DK, since you are the Phantasm Sherpa, the Jody of the trio, if you will, in the Phantasm fandom, is there like a canonical ranking of these films? Like, you know, back when Star Wars was just the original trilogy, it was Empire, Star Wars, Return of the Jedi. If you said anything other than that, people looked at you weird. Is there really such a thing for that with Phantasm?
For sure. Phantasm, it's 1, 2, 4, 3, 5. I think that's what most people will agree on. So 1, 2, 4, 3, 5. But that is not my ranking, just so we're clear.
You put 4 second, right?
I go Phantasm 1, Phantasm 4, Phantasm 2, 5, 3.
Bones, if you remember.
So after watching this the first time a few days ago, I revisited my big list rankings to make sure, and I think I go in order of release. What I can tell you is what you do see of 3 in this revision. I was like, damn, I kind of want to go back and watch 3 again.
Yeah. Even what might be considered the worst one, apart from 5, has some amazing shit.
Yeah. And then I remember listening to you on Nerds Geeks, DK, talking about, like, I think one week you had watched 4 twice.
Yeah.
And when you unveiled to the world, like, I'm moving up 4, it was like a big deal.
Fucking announcement.
So when I went to rewatch 4, I was like, all right, I got to put the DK goggles on.
Sure.
And there's some character stuff there.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, in my perception of it, where it seems not super linear, but relatively linear in understanding Phantasm, 4 does some interesting flips back that I think 5 unfortunately builds on in the wrong
Sure.
way, you know?
Yeah. I think I would probably agree with that. I think without 4, it makes even less sense than it already does. It's the only thing that holds all 5 movies together.
Yeah. And so there is this in the fandom that, for quite a while, 4 was the last one. And it is kind of an okay ending to the whole thing.
Yeah.
So 5 is sort of considered to be just for fun.
Yeah.
And I'll say this later. I'm saving this. Never mind. That's where I'm going to end that statement right now.
Okay. So, I mean, mine might be controversial. I go 1, 4, 5, 3, 2. I think that
2 is the worst, huh?
But I also have to say that other than the first one, those other 4 slots could change on whatever day it is, because I don't think they're that far apart.
Tell me why 2 is at the bottom.
I think a big part of it during this last watch through, because that one I've seen probably the second most other than the first. I think not having Mike in it hurts. I don't like there's nothing. I don't want to say James LeGros does a bad job, but there's nothing he does that Mike couldn't have done.
1,000%.
And
it's
I know that's
major
not
bummer.
It wasn't really their decision to hey, fuck you, Mike, but it's still, I think it hurts once you have more of an attachment to the series. So when I first watched it, I probably would have put 2 higher, but this last watch through, I wasn't a huge fan of it. And then I think watching 3 again, once you're used, 2 gets you into that new tone that it takes for those 2 movies. Once I've settled into that tone, I usually hate fucking kids in movies. Tim's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
He kills a lot of people.
He does. Now is probably a good time for me to bring this up.
Fiction.
Have you read it?
No, I know it just came out pretty recently.
Yes. There is an entire chapter, and I'll reference this book a couple times. I won't spoil too much, but there is an entire chapter just about Tim.
Beautiful.
You can see his mask there, and then his M80s. Basically, you get a full backstory on Tim, which actually is pretty cool. And that, reading that chapter of the book made me go, maybe Tim's okay. There is some interesting thing that happens to him, and you find that he's not just. Let me put it this way: it seems like Coscarelli wanted to start over almost, instead of resuming the story with Mike and Jody and Reggie. It almost feels like he wanted to do another Phantasm 1 with Tim as the main character.
Tim is like the Jean-Paul Valley.
Something like that.
Reggie's Batman.
Yes. But it didn't quite work that way for whatever reason. But Coscarelli clearly likes Tim a lot. And he kind of says, like, Phantasm was always about kind of a child's nightmare thing, right? So it made sense to go back to a kid's perspective. And yeah, I'm not saying it's going to blow your mind if you read this, but it is interesting. And if people don't like Tim, this might help you a little bit appreciate the Tim stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I would also say that with as many problems as Ravager has, I think the thing that stings the most is Chunk should have been Tim. There's no reason. I mean, no like story reason. I'm sure there were real life reasons.
Sure. No, you're totally right.
Tim in there.
You're totally right. Would have been a glorious return. And did you notice the name of the chapter was He Was Home Alone?
Yeah.
Home Alone reference.
Nice.
You're in
Good
trouble.
One, Don. Yeah, that's like all of that should have annoyed me, but it didn't. And I don't know why. Just like I think in the series in general, I should hate it, but I don't. Because usually I hate things where the plot is like the creators seem almost ambivalent to telling a coherent story. It's a huge problem I have with a lot of Italian films.
Sure.
And Lynch. But for some reason here, it's like, hey, I love a couple Lynch movies.
People might hear this. Careful with the Lynch stuff.
Chris, that's an excellent way to put it, actually, because I feel really strong. And I'm trying to find like another analogy or comparison for that. You know, it's like I wanted to say like it's like Thai food. Like there's like weird little things in Thai food or Chinese food. It's like I won't eat the little corns on their own. But for some reason, like it being in that mixture, like that stir fry, it all works together. And I'm like, okay, I'm here for it. And I love that little tiny fucking corn.
Hey, I mean, it's pretty
you know
good
what
by
I mean?
itself,
Like it's
but yeah, no, I mean, I totally get that.
And one thing I do enjoy about the franchise is, for the most part, every movie it has its own stink to it.
Yeah.
And there is no thread to lose in Phantasm. Like, and maybe that makes it all the more better, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think part of it is also like the first one, it's so outlandish that it's not based in any sort of reality. So you're not like, you can turn off that logical side of your brain where you're trying to poke holes in it because it doesn't make any sense in the first place. It's a guy turning people into dwarves for almost no reason.
Because of the gravity.
Their planet.
I think the phrase nightmare logic is probably best applied to that. And it makes sense. But I think a lot of creators want to try to hide behind that as an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Phantasm does, at least the first one doesn't.
Right.
I think it really works. I mean, sure, you're bumping into him being a new filmmaker and, you know, all the constraints that they had.
Yeah.
But what you do end up with is, I think you guys will agree, it's an absolute miracle.
Yeah. No, I mean, wasn't it filmed over the course of like 2 years or
something
more?
like that? Yeah. And Don's like 20 or something at this point.
Yeah. I mean, the staying power of it is incredible considering the circumstances, and it's a testament to the Don and our three main leads. So yeah, as I mentioned, Phantasm Revision is a fan edit, which is not really a dead format, which is the focus of this show. In fact, it's probably a more thriving community now than it was ever before, but it's still kind of something that I associate with those old days of VHSs, because I think with the proliferation of alternate cuts, we sort of have an embarrassment of riches. I mean, I mentioned that I had a compilation DVD of scenes from different movies, which is just, that would never happen today because it's a completely pointless thing to have when you have YouTube and the internet. But I remember back in the day, you would hear about these things like, oh, you gotta see the producer's cut of Halloween 6. It's so good. And the only way you could get those was if you knew someone that had it, or if you like went to a horror convention and bought like a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a VHS. So, I mean, are sort of like these fan edits or alternate cuts, is that something either of you are really into?
for sure with the things that I love with Army of Darkness, all the different versions. And I know there's that. I haven't seen it yet, but there's this like work print of Evil Dead 2 that's going around. Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
I just read about it for the first time, and I was like, yeah, give me that. It's pretty interesting. I do. It was one of those things where when I first got into horror, one of the movies that first got me into it was The Exorcist. Well, the version that I started with was the version you've never seen, which is an alternate version. And so when I was doing all this research, trying to make myself not scared anymore because the movie scared the shit out of me, I found, there's all these differences and this, and they changed this. And I was so interested by the process and why would they change it and why this and why that, that anytime there was that to be found, anytime that information was there, I was all over it, for sure.
Yeah. Quick side story about the version you've never seen. That's like the 25th anniversary one, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so when that came back into theaters, we went and saw it, and I was probably like 11 or so. And on the car ride there, my parents very somberly explained to me that this movie is about real things that can really happen to you. So that I would definitely rank it as one of the scariest movies I've ever seen.
Well, that's funny because my mom kind of did a similar thing, but she kind of set the trap and I fell into it. She rented it, the VHS. And she's like, oh, I left a movie in there. I think you might like it. We're going out for the night. You should check that movie out. And she basically put me in a room and said, watch The Exorcist while we're gone. And I felt like I needed to call someone, some protective services or something. Holy shit.
Man, I bet they laughed about that over dinner.
Yeah.
Chump-ass kid is home alone watching The Exorcist.
Yep.
Quick. Is producer's cut of Halloween 6 runes or no runes?
Runes, isn't it?
I think they both have them, but I think the producer's cut, I don't remember. I'm not even going to try to attempt to talk about it.
I think it's more rune heavy.
Yeah, it's more rune heavy, and I think it's more sexual assault heavy.
That is correct. And I don't think it's in both where Loomis has the mark at the end. That's producer's cut, right?
I think that's only producer's cut.
Yeah, okay.
A guy that literally has that tattoo should probably know this.
You're in the cult. All right.
I might have like kind of a sidesteppy politician answer here. I can't recall sort of, a collection-based edit group thing for feature films, really, as growing up. I can tell you, for some reason, we had this Time Life 4 VHS collection that was like history of comedy. That was nothing but like just like classic little segments from like This Is Your Life and Sid Caesar stuff and Bob Hope. So that sort of put like all these like nuggets of comedy guys forever. And then, so I know all this weird stuff about 50s through 70s, like sitcoms that I've never seen, but I know all the catchphrases and I know all this stuff. That was something that I just watched over and over because it was, I don't want to watch Indiana Jones. So let me just throw this in because I've watched Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade 10 times already this month. Let me just throw this in. When it comes to alternative cuts, I can tell you that it does kind of affect me sometimes. Like Michael Mann, I have never seen Black Hat. When Black Hat was released theatrically, it was very difficult because of the job that I worked at the time to get to the theater. And by the time it came out, it had been shat upon. And then the rumors of, well, he's got an alternate cut. And then I thought, well, given the Miami Vice director's cut, let me just wait until this comes out. And now anytime I sit down to watch it, I start Black Hat and then I go, wait, which cut is this? And I Google what are the differences in the cut. And then I realize like, oh, it's not the director's cut. And then you listen to another podcast and they'll say, I actually prefer the theatrical cut to the director's cut. And it creates this sort of stress. It's like, this is not even worth it.
Yeah. No, that's me and Blade Runner. I obsessed over which cut I was going to watch. And then
which one you have to try to defend?
I was like, well, I mean, I thought it was kind of boring, so I don't really have to defend the movie, but I was like, I put myself through way too much anxiety over which cut of Blade Runner I'm going to watch. Because that was a years long. And then finally I'm like, all right, fuck it. Whichever one I can download, that's the one I'm watching. So I know, DK, you were familiar with this before I reached out to you, but Bones, what were you thinking when I said 5 Phantasm films cut down to 90 minutes? What was your first reaction to that?
My reaction was, wow, sounds great. Maybe they will give me the definitive timeline. Then I thought, well, damn, I really like 2. How is he going to navigate this? And then I thought, wow, there are dramatic visual differences between the first and the last. Is this going to work in its favor from a timeline perspective? And then it became a sort of a, hey, don't black hat yourself. Just watch it. Like, don't stress. So I can't tell you, like, when it started and it opens with him on the highway in 4. I thought, oh, okay, It seems like this guy knows what he's doing. He's going to fold this baby in. And then after 25 minutes of still being on 1, I thought, uh-oh, something's going to get a little shortchanged.
Yeah. So, this guy has Jorge Torres. He's a filmmaker in his own right, but he's also done this for Friday the 13th and Death Wish and maybe a few others. I have thought of doing a similar thing with Death Wish before, just because Charles Bronson plays the same character in every, not just Death Wish movie, but every single movie he's in.
Yeah, put some 10 to Midnight in there. Why not?
Yeah. So what this guy did is he took footage from 250 Charles Bronson films or TV appearances and edited it down to what he calls the Death Wish.
How much
revision.
Man with a Camera is in there?
That's probably the prequel flashback. Like,
would you believe I've seen that entire show?
Oh, I would.
I have a Bronson problem.
Yeah, me too. I haven't ventured that far, but.
So when are we covering that one? Will that be in a few weeks? Because I'd like to go ahead and put that.
Man with the Camera?
No, I'm saying when are we going to do this? The
Bronson
Death Wish.
cut.
Yeah.
Oddly enough,
the 3
this
of
is
us.
the exact crew to do that.
Yeah.
Is it just scenes of him murdering people?
That is what I'm led to understand, which is what Death Wish is.
Rip to
just
the
scenes
giggler.
of him murdering people. It starts out, oh, my new girlfriend was sexually assaulted. That's the story. Then
Every
he kills
time.
people.
You son of a
Yeah.
bitch.
So I have this echolalia with one line from 10 to Midnight, which is not even like a cool line or like badass or something that would stick out to people. But I'd randomly in the day, I'll just say to myself that Dave Daunt's not a lawyer. He's a shyster.
I thought it was pie. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will, like, if I kick my cat off the counter or something, I then say, do you always violate people's constitutional rights? Like,
So good. So
Yeah.
good.
What's the one? Is it Murphy's Law where he's like, can you count to 5? How'd you like to try it with no teeth?
I think so. I just watched that one not that long ago, but
surely you guys have seen Messenger of Death.
the
Yep.
Mormon one. Yeah.
Oh my God. I watched that within the last 2 years, and there's a scene in that with the old dude crying over the kids that fucking got me, dude. And then there's a part where Bronson holds up his paper and he's like, I did a story on the massacre. And the way he's like, like, Chuck, let's not be so excited. The one time that you're excited.
Yeah. Also, the one time where he's a journalist and not some form of law enforcement.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we could sit here and quote Charles Bronson for God knows how long, but what do you say we just attempt to get into this?
All right.
Let's do it.
It's going to be a weird one to go through beat by beat, but we're going to try our best on this. So, the film opens with an ominous drone over a black screen. We hear the voice of adult Mike, played by Michael Baldwin in all of the films except for the second one, where he was replaced by James LeGros, which I mentioned earlier. He asks, "Where are you, brother? What's become of you?" We then cut to what may be the quintessential Phantasm scene taken from the first film, as Reggie joins Jody for an impromptu porch jam session in 1979. We get a close-up of Reggie stopping the vibrations of a tuning fork by placing his finger on each prong. And guys, is there any better way that they could have possibly opened this other than the porch jam session?
It's a comfortable scene. It is weirdly representative of what's to come. It is a good way to start, for sure. It's hot as love.
Yeah, so good. We get our title screen, Phantasm Revision, which I believe is an edited version of Phantasm 4, Oblivion. We see adult Mike in 1988, in footage also taken from Oblivion, driving a hearse down a desert road. In voiceover, he says, "Reggie, I've been moving southeast for 3 days now. I know he's behind me somewhere. Don't try to come after me. There's very little left alive out here anymore. The towns have all been abandoned. Do you remember our old town? That last perfect day before he came?" And see some scenes from the second and third movie of abandoned towns before flashing back to a scene that was originally filmed for the first Phantasm that was not actually used until being featured in Phantasm 4 as a flashback. Child Mike hops on the back of Reggie's ice cream truck, commits some petty theft, steals a fudgicle, and Reggie gives a knowing smirk in the side mirror. So my next question is that if the porch scene is the most iconic Phantasm scene, is this ice cream truck scene the most pointless scene in all of Phantasm?
Do you want me to tell you what the most pointless scene is? Okay, hang on.
Hey, if this isn't it, yeah.
I'm sure there's something in 5.
Can I point out what I think is going to be difficult
Yeah.
in this is keeping it restrained to the edit versus
Yes,
all 5.
Absolutely.
It's just going to be me pointing differences out.
Because all 5, kind of a pointless scene. This edit, I think it's very important to establish their connection because in my recollection of the edit, they don't have much engagement. You don't see him at the house really with Mike. You don't get him showing up right as the bug in the sink.
Do you not see Reg until the mausoleum later? Is that right? After this? In the edit?
I think immediately after this is the scene of Reggie and Jody meeting in front of the mausoleum.
The classic step into frame.
Yeah.
God,
yeah. I think that's a really good point, Bones, and I hadn't thought of that, of like the motivation behind including it here. I think that's a very good explanation, but I will say when it appears in Phantasm 4, it is much longer, and it definitely... That is the one part of 4 where I'm like, this kind of feels like padding for runtime.
Well,
like,
we had the footage, you know.
Yeah.
Like, why do we need to see this?
And it's set up in a way because Mike is sitting there kind of kicking the ground just as Jody rode his bike away, right? Because it's where he's on that street. There is a part of me that thinks I would like to see that stitched together. That full thing of Jody leaves him, he's alone, Reggie comes by.
You see it, I think you see the rest of it later.
Yeah.
It's a weird way to cut it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to be a tricky, because I can tell you, like, I'm going to do it. Okay, who cares?
Do it.
I think it should have opened with him hanging.
Yeah.
It should have opened with him setting the whole thing up and the dialogue of, I have a plan, blah, blah, blah. You cut back into 1, you see some stuff, and you introduce Tall Man with him coming and saying nope. And then you cut back, you show the sequence of the Tall Man.
Mm-hmm.
That could work for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that most stories being told asynchronically don't start from the beginning by definition, sort of, right?
Yeah.
But Bones, I love and I know we're jumping ahead, but the cutting between the Tall Man and Mike hanging they're onto something there.
Yes.
I think there's something working
agree.
there.
Yeah.
And I have a theory. It's an old theory, sir, but it checks out. I have a theory that I've been working on for a while that maybe Mike is the tall man. And I know other people have thought this. And I kind of watched this a couple times through the different lenses of the different theories and the different whatever. And I think my favorite way to watch this is maybe Mike being the tall man. So as we go through this, I'm going to point out some things. And the dual hanging scene is part of that. Is part of that whole thing. So I like that those two are together. But I'm not saying you're wrong. Starting with the hanging would be a really compelling way to start.
Right.
Hands down.
Yeah, there are definitely some parallels of they might be the same person that I picked up on this time around that I didn't before.
I have one mind-blowing new one that I have never even... I can't believe I haven't noticed it. We'll get there.
Whoa.
Okay.
Whoa.
And you guys might not even... you probably already know. I don't know how. I never thought of it. But again, watching with this lens, I was like, what the fuck? We'll see. We'll get there.
I'm having a blast, by the way. I think that's important to point out when people are having good moods.
That's good.
Yeah.
As I started, literally 5 minutes into this, I was like, I should have fucking watched this before asking them to come on and talk about it. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Funeral's about to begin, sir. See a brief scene of Tommy's funeral, accompanied by some voiceover from Reggie and Jody about how it was a good idea not to let Mike come to the funeral since Mike had nightmares for weeks after Mike and Jody's parents' funeral.
I believe that was an edit. In the original, I think you see them having that conversation.
Yeah, I think they actually...
So they just ripped the dialogue out and put it over the funeral, and I was like, oh, that works. For sure.
Yeah, and so if you are a psycho who has never seen any of these movies and is just listening to this, Mike is Jody's little brother. Reggie is Jody's best friend and an ice cream man. Tommy was presumably the third member of the Reg and Jody band. I think I got that right. Although I was reading that deleted scenes show Jody working in a bank in the first one, which just confuses me. But
sure.
It's not in here, so we don't have to worry about that.
It's not canon.
We see Child Mike riding a motorcycle through a graveyard, which I still think is an insane thing to do, especially in the middle of the day. Small shadowy figure is running around hiding behind graves. Child Mike goes to a local psychic because he is concerned that Jody will abandon him again. We get a couple of flashbacks. Mike tells the psychic that he's afraid because he saw something at Morningside that he wasn't supposed to see. In another flashback, we see Mike hanging out at the Morningside graveyard where the tall man single-handedly lifts a coffin and puts it in the back of his hearse rather than lowering it into the ground. And then in a scene famously ripped directly from Dune, Mike is instructed by the psychic to put his hand into a box, which causes him great physical pain. But once he removes his hand from the box, he realizes that the pain was all in his head. The psychic's granddaughter tells him that fear is the mind killer, and the decrepit old psychic woman is pleased by Mike's pain. Surely he's not the Kwisatz Haderach.
Oh! Yeah, she had her Gom Jabbar and everything. She's ready to go.
Spice. I wanted to get a Dune reference in too.
Spice. There's some things cut into there. So you get some things from 4 cut into when he has his hand in the box that gives you more context to like what's to come, but also like what maybe he's having some kind of a vision. We don't really know, but it's
Spice
I think
vision even.
It could be the spice agony. You get some more flavor there in this, if just specifically to bring up a difference in this cut is that you get a little bit more flavor there when his hand is in the box, and I think it's an interesting choice.
Can I tell you that I think you cut these. I think you cut these sequences.
The whole pain box?
Yeah. I don't think you need this lady. I don't think you need any of this premonition sort of stuff. I think I get it in the context of the first movie. It adds some goofiness to it. He's obviously inspired by Dune. But this as a whole, and I will say he does pepper in the lady when she pops up in the hearse later. But I think I'd maybe take this out.
I think I kind of agree with you, because the whole fear is the mind killer thing is very pertinent to the themes that are more front and center in the first one. It's less pertinent to all of the movies after it. So it's kind of setting up something that doesn't really have a payoff, because we're not watching the first movie, we're watching all 5 of them.
Yeah.
But
I think you could argue that okay, this might be going a little whatever. When he sees her in the hearse in 4, I wonder if that's because when you see the grandmother, to me, she represents that statement. Fear is the killer. So when you see her, that's supposed to be Mike going, ugh, I shouldn't be afraid. Why am I afraid? Like, I need to take control. So when she is in that passenger seat, that's almost like his brain going, do not be afraid. Let's just do this. So not that it's like a planned payoff or anything, but to me, that's like immediately you go, oh, what is she from that scene? That's what it means. So I don't know if that's what Coscarelli means. There's no information that I've ever found. But to me, that's what she represents, is that. Particularly when she pops up in the driver's seat or in the passenger seat.
Okay, so if we're going to talk about that part, do you know who the no-face man in the back is? Is that Jody?
I don't know.
Kind of got a Jody vibe.
But it's scary. And it's good. It's like the scariest thing in all of them, almost. It's really scary.
It is like it's like Jacob's Ladder or something.
100%.
Like that kind of stuff. I
had a real thing happen to me that was like that, where it was probably 4 a.m. and I'm headed home after a very long night. And I looked in the rearview mirror and I thought I saw someone in the back seat, and I felt like I was having a heart attack. I couldn't breathe. It was terrible. So like, I know what that feels like exactly. And so every time I see that, I go, oh, that's good. And it's just, the cut is so perfect. And it does that little movement. Like you see it twice. Oh, Coscarelli.
Yeah. There's something going on with like the frame rate or something at which they film that gives it almost like a a little bit of a stop motion feel to it.
And you can only just make it out. It's awesome.
Next, we see a scene of Mike spying on his brother Jody, who for reasons unknown in this cut is boning down a woman on top of a grave in the Morningside Cemetery. Then we see Mike in bed waking up from a dream, only to be dragged underground by 2 of the tall man's zombie-looking dudes. We cut back to, I guess, what is considered present day in this cut. We're back with Phantasm 4 adult Mike driving down the desert road. He's chasing the black dog and narrowly avoids a head-on collision with a semi-truck. And guys, what are you thinking about this cut so far?
I mean, I'm into it. Unfortunately, all I'm thinking is I'm seeing a lot of 1, I'm seeing a lot of 4. Like, you're cutting into your overall time. And I'm getting nervous about that transition, because I think it's a bummer. I don't mind the guy who plays Mike in 2. I don't. I would have preferred it to be Mike. He looks good in 3, man. He's got killer hair. Runs up into 4. He looks great. Gosh, the poor guy. When he gets to 5, it's an absolute bummer. And it doesn't help that Reggie ages really gracefully. But also by this point, I'm thinking, hey, man, are you sticking with Mike? Because it's about time to start pumping Reggie in here, because he, at a certain point, becomes our main guy.
Right.
And I think that forces it to be a little tighter, and you get like a 5-minute fucking violent montage to introduce Reggie, which is a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, so I know the answer for you on this, Bones, is definitely no. But DK, have you ever seen Puppet Master: The Legacy?
Which one is that? Tell me what happens in that one. I've seen many of them.
It's the one that's a clip show.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So yeah. I was very much thinking, is that where this edit is going, where it's just going to be Mike driving down the road, like, remember the time when Reggie fucked the tall man? And then we do a flashback, and then it goes back to Mike. That was crazy. It's almost like the time Reggie welded 2 shotguns together. I started to get that feel right here, but I was still on board at this point.
It's Family Guy spelled with a PH.
Well, Bones, when I interrupted you earlier, this is the thing I was going to say. This is a while ago now. But and I don't know, maybe you were planning to ask us this later, but I have to feel like I have to say this now. If I was going to do this, I don't think you can focus on Mike and Reggie. I think you have to make a choice. You can have some Reggie in there, but we cannot be following Reggie and all these other things that he's doing. The clip show of Reggie doing, we can't have that. I think you focus on, I think in my edit, there would be a lot of 1 and 4. And certainly not much of 2, although you need some of that to get between them. But I think mine would be mainly 1, 3, and 4. I don't know if I would even touch much of 5. There might be a couple things. I don't want to see Reggie's death. I don't want to see... There's a lot of things in 5 I don't want to see, even though I love that movie, I really do. But there's a lot of things that I would remove completely. They feel like fan fiction or something. So,
yeah.
and with the narrative that I'm trying to reveal, I would be removing things and basically going towards this idea that maybe the tall man is Mike. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point, but I think it is very difficult because the series itself does sort of change to Reggie at a certain point. So I guess, if this guy's goal is to include all 5, I can see why he did it that way. But I do think I kind of agree that the better way to do it would be one or the other.
Yeah, and again, I know we're skipping ahead, but like Tim, I like the Tim stuff, I do, but why is it in there?
Yes.
It's such
why indeed.
Yes, you get that entire house siege sequence only to explain why there's a kid with a gun in the mausoleum when you see Rocky.
Any of that. You literally don't need any of that.
And I feel like he worked backwards from that, right? Because he wanted to show the cryo bin full of balls. And they're in those sequences, so you need to kind of pedal back, which is a bit of a bummer.
Because you're holding on to so much Reggie.
Yeah.
If we let go of some of that Reggie, look, you lose some quintessential Phantasm if you take Reggie out. And I am in no way saying we take Reggie out of Phantasm. Keep the Christ in Christmas, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if I'm doing a fan edit where I'm putting all these movies together, I'm going to focus on Mike. Because you get the gift of all that extra footage from 4, you can still tell a linear story going that direction. But focus on Mike. I'm sure there's a way to do it.
It's really hard to argue, particularly with you. A, I like you a lot, and B, you know more about this. I think what I wanted out of it when it started was when you see him in the car, I thought, oh, this is perfect for him because of the age changes, the casting differences. He can be here. We can cut to him intermittently. And then when I thought, oh, actually, if you open up with him hanging, him reliving parts of 1 to set up, actually, your brother died. Then you transition to the opening of 2, which I love. And then you cut into, I was an ice cream guy, blah, blah, blah. You follow Reggie a little bit. You establish him. He's our main action character. And then you cut back to Mike being told by the tall man, nope, I'm not going to kill you. Then you see your antagonist stuff of the tall man as they all intercede. End of 3 on. I thought maybe that's a way to layer it. But like I brought up before, when we talk about like why we get that whole Tim scene, it does feel like he pinpointed certain things and then realized, shit, this guy's in this shot. I got to go back. But then at a certain point, about 3/4 of the way through the movie, he goes, well, Chunk's just a guy.
Yeah.
That's just a guy.
Yep.
Or I really want to show, chick pull her scalp off. It's a cool shot.
Sure.
Not necessary. it's tough. I get that, like the fan servicey elements of like if you don't put this in, people are going to knock you, but it's going to affect narratively what you're going to be able to edit together.
Yeah. Mike hallucinates a strange figure sitting in the back of the hearse, which we talked about earlier. Then he sees that old psychic woman, which we've also discussed. We see the first encounter between him and the tall man, where we get the famous caretaker guy who is in this version just like some random dude that's not been seen before. He dies, and suddenly we, back in the present day of adult Mike, the tall man is in the back of the hearse. The two exchange some harsh words before the tall man enters a portal hidden in the casket in the back of the hearse. And we get another voiceover from adult Mike. I don't know why he's brought me here. Feels like I'm at ground zero of his experiment. There is one escape from him, though, and I've got a plan. When the sun comes up, I'm going to force him out, see if I can't take him down with me. And this is when we go to a flashback of the Civil War surgery scene.
I have a 1,000 things to say right now.
Yes, please say 1,000 things.
Okay. We already talked about the hearse and the scare and what that's all great. When we see, first of all, another thing from this book, the caretaker is a character in this book. You learn about his life. Mm-hmm. It's not the most interesting thing, but basically Coscarelli goes, hey, what if I made this a really sympathetic character who just gets murdered for no reason? It's pretty good. The reason I really wanted to go back here is because once he's dead and pisses all over the floor, Mike stands up, tall man enters the hall.
Yes, yeah.
They have a stare down. I love Mike's, shit. It's amazing. Here's one of my first new revelations. They absolutely stop at the same time. They take each step in unison towards each other, exactly together, almost as if they're linked somehow, or maybe they're the same dude. I don't know, but it really is weird when you're going through thinking, I wonder if that's the same character, and they do the exact movement.
Yeah, I think the first three movies, I'm like, yeah, he's the tall man. I think 4 and 5 make it more complicated, not impossible. Just
not in my cut, baby.
The amount of effort it would take me to tie that together, I'm just like, fuck it. I don't care. He's not the tall man. But yeah, that is a really cool scene that I did not notice before.
First of all, I love that the casket in the back of the car is like a portal that you can open.
Yeah.
I love it.
But also at one point, isn't there a suit in there? You don't see it in this edit, but like in the movie, like, doesn't he pull a suit out of there? That's aside. That doesn't matter. Anyway, I think Mike, anyway, when you see the tall man say whatever he's going to say, does he say, damn you to hell? Is that scene?
Impossible.
Oh, not not possible. Anyway, yeah. You cut back and the tall man is sliding into the casket like a child down a slide at a fucking McDonald's. It's beautiful to see his little leg and foot shoe go through there. Imagine Angus Scrimm diving into a coffin.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
One of the things during the Civil War scene, I was convinced this time, since it's probably like the highest definition I've ever watched it in, I was convinced one of the guys in the caskets was the caretaker from the first movie. It's like, if it is him, he's not credited, but it could be an actor made up to look like him. I checked. That dude was only in 2 other movies as grocery store clerk and Mr. Soupy.
Oh, Mr. Soupy.
Yeah. From Kenny and Company.
I don't think all those people are credited. So you're probably right.
It looks a lot like him.
I think it's him. I thought so too.
What could that possibly mean? I don't know, but
I weirdly chose to ignore it, but I was like, I think that's the same guy.
If I look at this edit, if I look at all 5 movies, my understanding of the timeline, the Civil War edit is my number 1. What is this? Please explain how this fits. I'm forgiving of the fact that we're made to believe that it's a interplanetary slave trade thing, but then becomes actually it's a guy who's been doing interdimensional travel to gain strength, and these are his minions as he can do that. I totally buy it. I totally buy where 2 takes, actually, you got a ball in your head, all of this. I kind of love that. The Civil War flashback, there's this part of me that's like, is that another dimension? Is that another universe where this happens? And
I have a theory, Bones.
Okay.
This is the part where I'm going to sound crazy.
Okay.
And I don't know if I can actually articulate all this, but this goes into my theory. When you see him and it's Mike on the table and he's jamming something into his nose, what do you think he's doing? What if he's putting a sphere in there? What if he's putting the ball in?
That's always kind of what I assumed.
Yeah.
My question is, he's putting it in at this age,
Right.
200 years ago.
That's what I
Yes.
was thinking.
And
That's true. It's weird. I know.
that's what fucks my that's why it's the one thing that fucks up my head in terms of trying to kind of.
Should I give you the okay, let me
Yeah.
Oh God, I don't know if I can explain all this. You know what? It's better if we wait because there's a scene where it comes up. So it's better if we wait.
Child Mike and Jody discuss a plan to kill the tall man. Then we go back to 1988. Adult Mike peers into the portal hidden in the casket. We see a bunch of crazy shit, which I did like the way that those visions were edited together. Before we go back to 1979, Child Mike, Jody, and Reggie discover a portal to the tall man's home planet, and somehow, based on pretty much zero evidence, they deduce that the tall man has been stealing bodies, shrinking them down to 3 feet tall creatures called lurkers, and using them as slave labor on the tall man's planet. And this is one of those things that makes exactly as much sense in this edit as it does in the original, because it's kind of like Mike just decides that's what he's doing.
In the Civil War scene, I just saw this note of mine. What he says before he jams the thing into the nose is, "Let me release you from this imperfect flesh that ties you to space and time."
Oh, shit.
So it doesn't matter that's in the goddamn Civil War. Keep that in your pocket for later.
Okay.
The portal to the tall man's planet emits a low hum and is oddly reminiscent of the tuning fork that we saw Reggie using at the beginning of the film. He hesitantly places his hands on each side of the portal, and we're transported forward in time to the year 1998. Apparently, none of this stuff actually happened. It's all been a figment of Reggie's early onset dementia-riddled brain. He's in a nursing home of some sort, and his buddy Old Mike tells him that the doctors said it's good to keep Reggie's brain active, so Old Mike asks Reggie to once again recount the story of the tall man. We flash back to 1979, and gentlemen, we have reached timeline entropy. We are now in a flashback within a flash forward within a flashback.
All right, Lindelof.
I think this part was simultaneously, like when he touches the forks and we go to Ravager, I was like, we've got something here. Like, this is fucking cool.
Yeah.
But then immediately when it's like flashback, flash forward, flashback, then I was like, do we have something here? I don't know.
It's close. I feel like it's very close to something. Yes. But I don't know if it quite. And again, if this is my cut, I'm not doing any of this old Reggie stuff. I don't think I want any of it in there.
I love the old Reggie stuff. I think it's
I like it.
In this edit, I think it's one of the few glimpses of like somehow tying this all together in a new and interesting way. Like you alluded to, does it stick the landing? Only time will tell, but I thought that was an interesting cut right there.
I can't argue with that. It is. It's good.
And its context within the 5 is kind of difficult because 2 rewrites itself. So 5 is rewriting what we rewrote.
Yeah.
I mean, goddamn. Okay. Can we talk Angus at this point?
Yeah.
Can we talk
let's
about
always.
a positive from this edit is, God, what a joy he is as the tall man. Just ultimately consistent through here and knows what he's in and knows how to play each different interpretation is incredible. I don't think we've gotten there yet when he's nice guy Morningside serving the lemonade is my favorite bit of his performance ever in the series. Like please come back. We have so many questions. Like,
Yeah.
I really do like Phantasm 5 Angus when he says, "You'll never be safe." I love all that stuff.
yeah, his turn in the bed is incredible.
Exactly. When he turns evil all of a sudden. It just comes across his face just at that last second. And it's a great cut there too.
I think we may have been robbed never getting a Phantasm video game, if only for the reason that the commercial writes itself. If we could have had a commercial with Angus Scrimm that says, "You play a good game, boy. Now play a good Game Boy. Phantasm for the Nintendo Game Boy."
And he would have done it. He would have done that commercial for free.
Yeah, so I mean, before we start talking about this movie, we're talking about, what we're doing for Halloween. Every year I edit together like 2 4-hour blocks of commercials with like Halloween specials and movies mixed in. And I was going over it yesterday because I made this months ago just to make sure that it works on my Plex. And there's a commercial in there of Angus Scrimm advertising Fangoria magazine. And it's just the most delightful thing ever.
Have you seen, there's a clip of him, he like does a cameo in some movie, and I don't know the movie. Have you seen the clip where it's like, it's a Phantasm spoof, and then they start playing baseball with the spheres?
No.
I think, Bones, did I send that to you? I forget.
It sounds awfully familiar.
I feel like I did, but I don't remember what it's from. If you just Google Phantasm parody Angus Scrimm.
Baseball.
It's worth baseball. Rest in peace, James Earl Jones. Baseball.
Transylvania Twist.
Okay.
1989.
He shows up as the tall man, and they play a little baseball. It's like a 2-minute clip worth watching.
He's the best. He's one of the greats. One of the all-time.
By all accounts, he was at the conventions. He was so lovely with the fans. By all accounts, he was like the nicest man ever to live.
The week that we covered, I want to say 2 on the show, I had a little bit extra time, and it's one of the rare like physical media things that I own. So I threw on the commentary, and he and Reggie were an absolute blast on the commentary. Like, you could tell they had such reverence for what they were doing.
Yeah.
That's always nice.
Have you seen his Masters of Horror?
No.
The Coscarelli one?
Oh, I was like, did Angus Scrimm direct?
God, I wish. That would have been amazing. He shows up in the Coscarelli one, which, sorry, Don, if you're listening, and I'm sure you are. I don't think the episode is very good. It's a cool story I just don't think it's executed perfectly. But Angus Scrimm shows up as like a crazy man living in the woods who's kind of being held by this other crazy man, if I remember it correctly. And he like sings a song and he's like, "Do you have any candy? I love candy. I'd like to eat some candy. Did you bring candy?" It's amazing. It's worth watching just for that.
Yeah, I'll have to check that. Haven't seen that one.
Please
check it out. Back in 1979, the trio faces off against the tall man. It's intercut with scenes of 1988 adult Mike preparing to hang himself in the desert. And at the 30-minute mark, all my apprehensions about this fan edit were assuaged because we cut back to 1979, where Reggie explains to child Mike, "Mike, that tall man of yours did not take Jody away. Jody died in a car wreck."
What?
And I am fucking the Leo meme pointing at the screen. He said the thing.
He said a thing. As they're leading tall man, I think this is that same part, leading him towards the mine shaft, the hands come out of the mud.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way there are creatures and hands in the mud. That's got to be something in Mike's mind, right? Maybe. Maybe
Okay.
some influence that the tall man has over Mike. Why would that be? Think about it.
Mud is cold, and Jebediah Morningside found out how to manipulate things as simple as warm and cold.
That's one. That is one. maybe it's he can control him because there's a sphere in his head already. Maybe Mike already has a sphere in his head, is what I'm trying to say.
Reminiscent of the nightmare of him being pulled in. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep. This is why Tall Man is so whatever. Anyway, yes, so we cutting back and forth between the two hanging scenes. And I remember like when I first watched this cut, I was like, oh, this is so perfect. They're going to make this work. They're going to make this work. And it doesn't quite do it. But seeing it cut together like that is so great. And it's kind of what this, I think I watched this 3 times. The second time I watched it, I was like, oh shit. I wonder if I really look for the tall man Mike thing, am I going to find it?
Yeah.
And this really, really goes there.
Well, I was going to say I kind of had those same feelings of like, this is another nugget of what this edit's trying to do, but ultimately I felt like it was just, they have a visual similarity. And
that's where it feels like it stops. Yep.
Yeah, it stops there.
Yep. Yeah. It really feels like you're onto something there, though. For just a second, you're like, oh shit, they're going to do it. And it doesn't quite.
Would you say it's like poetry? It rhymes?
It rhymes. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say that. But now let me ask you this. Did we already see... We already saw it, I think, when they first go through the interdimensional fork, the dimensional fork. Did we not see Reggie die in this cut?
Why
do we see
remember?
that? I think you see it in this cut.
You get
Why
Jody
on
running
earth?
around. Yeah.
Why on earth does it show Reggie dying? Cut that out. This is your chance to fix that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Lose it. Why would you show that? It just adds confusion.
Solid.
I don't mind a little mystery, but that to me seems like a obvious. Come on.
We see the tall man, quote unquote, defeated for the first time, and for the next 10 or so minutes of the film, we get a montage of scenes pulled from 2 and 3 that take place story-wise between the years of 1986 and 1988. Reggie and Mike once again defeat the tall man, and suddenly we get another voiceover from Reggie that gives us a little more context to what the fuck is actually going on. Apparently, the tall man wants to turn Mike into a tall man, and it seemed like they were going to change perspective to Reggie at this point, but they kind of don't really do that. I thought it was weird.
And it makes future Reggie thinking he's crazy lose a little bit of impact if he's not a little bit more primary.
Yeah.
Because, or you need to add more at the end from 5 of Mike, which you don't really have. God, I'm just gonna put it on record. It's such I fucking love 2, so it's such a bummer too. I mean, you get the great, that effect of the ghoul or whatever coming out of her back, and tall man talking to him is great, and
one of my favorite lines from the series is right there where Reggie goes, "Get the fuck back!"
Yeah,
yes, absolutely. That's a real Freddy Krueger looking effect, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, this is the section where it's like a 30-minute best of compilation. We probably don't need to go through it at all unless there's like some specific scenes, like Bones was saying, the little Freddy ghoul coming out of Liz's shoulders.
And it reminds you that a big chunk of Phantasm is an ice cream guy just trying to get laid.
Yep, it sure is.
It takes it down to its just base human impulse.
And the song that plays, I think we're right there, like the heavier version of the Phantasm theme. That's Have You Seen It? And that is performed by Reggie and his band.
The jizz wailing doggies.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like it introduces you a little bit to the crazy cast of characters that they have met along the way. I do feel like it focused. It's weird because it's like a greatest hits, but it also like is not, because it keeps in a lot of the like dialogue of those three people that are chasing Tim. That kind of breaks up the flow of like, it's not really a montage, but it's not really narrative.
Yeah, it starts as
in between.
It starts as a Reggie kill montage, and then it goes to Tim. It is a very strange choice.
Yeah, certainly. I think this was kind of my jumping off point where I'm like, they're not going to do anything with this. I don't want to besmirch the guy that put in so much time and effort, but at this point I was like, I don't think there's really a through line to this.
Yeah, I think I had a similar thing right around this time too. I was like, hang on, why have we... Now I'm just thinking about all these scenes and the stuff that's not there. I know it would have a different effect if I had never seen them, but I gotta imagine it would be confusing as hell if I hadn't seen them.
Yes.
I mean, it would be unwatchable, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm not really sure who this is for at this point.
I once heard somebody on I want to say to cheerlead other shows, Screen Drafts, their mega Bond draft. I forget the critic's name. He was on there and he was talking about the Craig era. And he was one of the first people to ever share my main complaint of his run is that you go from Quantum of Solace to Skyfall. You go from relatively new to immediately seasoned with no movie in there.
You're a relic.
Yes. And what he talks about is some problems in Skyfall, or things that pointed out to him, were that all the things that people like, oh, the car, oh, this, it's all necessary to have seen all of these other movies for it to inform that. So every time I watch Skyfall now, it's like, I don't believe that there's, that the intent was, oh, Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, Doctor No. Then at the end, you jump to Skyfall and on.
Sure.
I don't believe that that's their intent, but it naturally happens that way. I bring that up now because it's so impossible to watch this edit without thinking, you can't just show this to somebody. It would not make any sense. So that inherently makes it difficult. But as we're talking through it and going, this is to your point, Chris, I don't think you're necessarily insulting the person's work, but you can, from a critique element, say some of the decisions and things that you're pulling out are too fan servicey or too bloated, and they affect the through narrative of what the edit's trying to achieve.
And I'd love to hear his perspective on it too.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a really good reason why some of that stuff is there, but we'll
get to that towards the end. But yeah, okay. I do think it's interesting, Bones, that you like the problem that so many people have with modern movies of all these reboot-quels and remakes is like too much fan service. It's interesting that you can still somehow fall into that trap when you're editing like pre-existing material. It's all based on what you decide to put in it.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Well, okay. A movie's made 3 times. You write it, you shoot it, you edit it, right? And then a franchise, as you continue each on, there's like subsects of each subsequent movie and what you're choosing to show and what you're choosing to continue and build upon. So now you take this, you're not only picking from that movie, you're also sort of picking from its 3 incarnations, its intention, what is shot, and how it was edited and presented. So there's like 15 different options.
Yeah.
As opposed to just 5.
I think this being an edit of like pre-existing material, it adds like a 4th layer of like, it's made a 4th time by how the Phantasm audiences have received it over the years. So that's now going into this.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, dude.
We're going deep.
Doing calculus here.
Quantum mechanics. I'll give you a book on it.
Okay.
After that montage, the noose that adult Mike is attempting to hang himself with in the present day of 1988 breaks, and the tall man shows up. Tall man offers his hand to adult Mike. After an uncomfortably long pause, adult Mike rejects it and runs into a pair of dimensional forks that have appeared in the desert. Be careful what you look for. You just might find it, the tall man says. Adult Mike is transported back in time to the 1800s. He's at Morningside Mausoleum and he meets Jebediah Morningside, the man who would eventually be transformed into the tall man after entering the dimensional forks. Jebediah offers Mike some lemonade, and adult Mike freaks out and goes back to 1988. We then see Reggie driving through the desert. He sees a woman driving a car and pulls up next to her. But as he does, a tortoise wanders into the middle of the street. The woman flips her car. Luckily, Reggie is able to pull her out completely unscathed. Reggie takes the woman to a hotel room and regales her with the tale of his and Mike's war against the tall man. After listening to Reggie's story, the woman says, "Reggie, you sound so demented," which I thought was interesting now that I'm watching all of these, and that he does, in one of the possible futures, get dementia. It's interesting that he may have it.
What a connection. I didn't.
Damn.
Wow. Honestly, you just blew my mind a little bit. So I can't believe you just blew my mind. That's unbelievable.
But I think it gives evidence for the timeline that people dislike the most. So
True.
Can I throw out a pitch of something that I just thought of?
yes.
Show this earlier in Reggie's narrative. This is his justification for explaining what he's seen. So Mike, either in the car talking to himself or journaling, we see what's got him to this point. Cut to Reggie driving, flip, get this lady, who is this? Starts telling the story, then show your montage, all these things that have happened. Then cap that with what happened, like the reveal of what's in her chests, and then go forward.
Is that the most 5DR moment of all Phantasm?
Pretty damn close, dude.
A horse,
And
probably.
horse
Either-
is up there,
yeah.
yeah.
The sphere breasts or the horse?
Yeah.
So I was gonna say, well, you're about to reveal it, but it does make the the tortoise thing weird. It was like, right?
It was already weird.
It's yeah, but do you need the turtle for the reason that her car messes up? Or if she's got the balls, it's implied that she's already kind of going after him, right?
Sure.
So what luck
Yeah.
that there's a turtle there and she wrecks then. Is that just more interesting than her car's broken down? Because they did that in the one before, two
No,
before?
that's in 5.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
Coscarelli just wants to flip cars, dude.
they probably just had B-roll of a tortoise and they're like, it's in there.
Yeah.
Let's use it. So yeah, Reggie falls asleep beside this woman. He wakes up back in 1998 in the nursing home he was left at. In the bed next to him is Jebediah Morningside. Reggie wakes up from that dream, and the lady he was shacking up with, this is when we get the silver sphere boobs. Reggie destroys
out.
them.
I would argue.
What a weird reaction.
Far out. I would maybe say maybe she's normal until he falls asleep. The tall man comes, gives her a little augmentation surgery, and then he wakes up, and then they're there. Just a thought, maybe.
Yeah.
In this one, I think so, but I can't remember what happens between him falling asleep and waking up in the actual movie.
I think he does fall asleep, so you don't know you just don't know what happened because he's asleep. You don't see it.
Tall man gets ready to go through a nostril and then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Changes at the last minute to be a little kinky with it.
Oh, yeah.
I've already done the head.
So he destroys those spheres. He puts on his old ice cream man uniform, heads out into the desert in search of adult Mike. He's greeted by a lurker that he quickly dispatches with his double-barreled shotgun. Just then, adult Mike and Jody emerge from a pair of heretofore unseen dimensional forks. Now we get a voiceover from Jody, giving some background on the tall man. As Undertaker, he bore witness to the stark passage from life to death, but the more he put into the grave, the more questions he had. He came to the conclusion that the answers were before him, hidden in subjects as simple as shifting phases, vibration, warmth, and cold. It became his life's work, his passion to learn the craft, find the rift, and make his way through that passage. This is the hour. The time has come. And so right here, I was like, are they kind of doing like a 3 thing where each person gets to have their monologue and then they switch to that person's perspective for a little bit? Because we already had it. It opens up with Mike, and we have Reggie halfway through, and now we have Jody, but there's not actually enough Jody dialogue or moments to make that little triptych thing work. I don't know. How did you feel about Jody entering and getting a monologue?
Well, I don't think you get some of the very important information any other way. I think that it just happens to be the way it was delivered, and that's the way we have to show it. This is one of the main scenes where I start to think about these theories again. First of all, when they come through that fork, Mike says, "Don't trust him. Don't trust Jody." I think that's important. Also, I think there's some Phantasm 5 music there that like actually fit. I could be wrong, but it felt like maybe there was music from Phantasm 5 that was put there that I was like, oh, I think that's from later, but it works. Anyway, that doesn't matter. So when we find out, like this is the last time he's Jebediah Morningside, he goes through the portal. He can't see them then, but when he comes back, he can see them, right? He sees Mike. Mike's the first person he sees when he comes back. You notice he comes back holding a ball.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know exactly what all this means, but I think the very next scene we see is when, don't they pull the ball out of his head?
It's very shortly after that.
So when we get to that, I just want to bring this up now because it might make more sense now. When he comes through after leaving, he's holding a ball, and I wonder if it's the same ball he just pulled out of Mike's head. You have to almost just watch it and think about it.
Certainly possible. I guess this is a good time to talk about this. I know I do love Ravager, but I think to a certain, 4 is a better ending for the series.
Yes.
If we want to look at Ravager as just like a what if, I think what I get from the first 4 movies, the reason that adult Mike or that Mike is so important to the tall man is that there's what's it called? Retrocausality, time paradox. Like Mike creates the tall man because Mike goes through those forks and meets Jebediah Morningside, who had not yet gone through those forks.
Yep.
Presumably because maybe he was afraid to do so. So Mike has to go through those to convince the tall man or Jebediah to go through the forks and then become the tall man.
Yep.
And so the reason he doesn't want Mike to kill himself is because if Mike kills himself and never goes back in time, he never, the tall man never exists.
That's a perfect theory.
That is a very supportable theory through the first 4.
That might be what it was intended. You're probably right. It's really hard to argue with that. Bones?
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, it's the John Connor shouldn't exist sort of thing, right? To simplify it in another franchise term.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't dislike or hate that. There's an element of this just reinforcing how frustrating that is. that it isn't a little bit cleaner, you know? And then I don't know. You just get to this certain point where when stuff falls off a franchise, when it's sort of spaced out, you kind of forgive it, you kind of forget it. But when it's crammed together, you are sort of like, wow, serious lack of lurkers, you know, and things like that. Yeah. So when you get to this heady, drawn out point, you, I, if I'm going to pay or if I'm going to invest and sit there and go through the more drawn out, heady stuff, give me the reward of explaining it or making it so easy that I get it. And I cannot believe that I never thought about that before. Like that is, I think you just did more work for the franchise in terms of it like bumping up for me.
I mean, it's all there. It does take some gymnastics to get there, but it's also like, okay, well, maybe that's why he put the ball in his head. So he has, tracking or maybe some semblance of control over him so he can make sure that he doesn't kill himself. And then at the end of 4, like he pulls the ball back out. We could assume Mike is dead and the series ends with Reggie just going into the Forks to fight the tall man, which I think is a good ending for the series.
I totally agree.
Because it's like, it doesn't need to be definitive because nothing in this is. So,
yeah.
So at this point, Mike goes into the Forks. He wakes up in the mausoleum where the tall man is there and Jody's holding him down on a table. What the fuck, bro? Why are you doing this? Tall man begins to cut into Mike's head. Mike has the tuning forks, which he uses to short circuit the tall man and Jody. Adult Mike slits Jody's throat using a nearby silver sphere. As Jody lies on the floor bleeding to death, he says, "I died in the car wreck." There it is. He died in the car wreck.
In case you missed it.
Adult Mike escapes the tall man through the dimensional forks and tells a waiting Reggie Jody's dead, which is not exactly news to Reggie because, as he knows and as Jody just confirmed, Jody died in a car wreck in 1979.
Everybody knows it.
Except Mike. Mike doesn't. Tall man comes through the forks. He, Reggie, and Adult Mike duke it out. The tall man ultimately comes out on top. Tall man pulls a silver spear out of Mike's skull and fucks off through the forks. Reggie grabs a shotgun and goes in after him. We zoom into Adult Mike's eyes where we get a glimpse of the 1998 future in which the world is overrun by lurkers and giant spheres, which I liked this cut, this editing that they did of zooming into his eye and seeing what I think you guys really hated that scene of the like tracking shot through the post-apocalyptic future, but I really like it. I mean, I can imagine what they were going for had they had a better budget.
You don't have any other choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll shoot them some bail on that. I like it in theory, we'll say. It's probably the best way. And so then we get the montage from Ravager where Mike says the world had changed. Full-blown invasion was underway, an all-out attack against the world we knew. Governments collapsed, society crumbled, an alien virus unleashed, people were sick, and eventually their heads would swell up until they popped. The body count was immense and there was no cure. And guys, let me ask you this. Is the tall man an alien? Because I feel like he's not an alien.
I don't think he is. An interdimensional being, to be exact, if you want to take a thing from Indiana Jones.
Okay, so my interpretation is it shouldn't be an interpretation. They are saying he
they say alien virus.
Right, but he copied himself, right? And went through space and time however many different ways. What we see in Phantasm 1 is potentially just one of those particular working planets or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think alien virus is just something that came through a portal, right? Or it's not outside the possibility of what this is established that something could have come through. An alien doesn't necessarily mean extraterrestrial, right? Yeah. So
true. I kind of got the impression, like, I'm sure DKU at least have seen Hellraiser 2.
Absolutely.
So Leviathan, the god of their version of hell, is just like this giant diamond, basically. I kind of think that my thinking on it is like there's some sort of like elder god that's just this giant sphere, like some Lovecraftian unknowable horror that is
Yes.
controlling, like the tall man's just like one of his minions. That's the way I think about it. I mean, there's not really any evidence to support that.
Let me give you one. Let me give you one little piece of evidence, maybe. And that is above the door to the White Room, what is there?
Like some Greek gods.
Gods. Above the passage room to go to those other places. It's maybe nothing, or maybe it's like, look, this is beyond man's comprehension. This is a higher intelligence. This is way far beyond anything you can understand. That's what those symbolize. It's an idea. It kind of could go along with what you're saying.
Okay, is this part of the Stargate cinematic universe?
Well, we got two pieces of evidence right there.
If Michael Shannon's playing the tall man in the remake, we got to get James Spader to be adult Mike, and then we got to get
Haley Joel Osment as middle-aged.
Hey, honestly though, okay, I don't know. This might be dumb, but Patrick Wilson as Reggie?
I was going to ask who Kurt Russell is. Is he Jody or is he Reggie?
He should be Reggie.
Okay. He's got such good hair, though.
Caretaker. just a little taste.
Hairtaker.
I like Patrick Wilson, man.
I do too, and I think he'd be. Can you just imagine him with a little of that hair gone, and the Reggie look, and put him in that ice cream outfit? Like I could see Patrick Wilson being Reggie.
He pulls off Schlubby. He's in Watchmen. He
can do it.
Attractive as hell, and I
100%.
think that's Reggie is a good looking dude, man.
Yeah, and he's smooth.
Yeah.
The problem is everyone's going to Turkey to get hair transplants, so we don't have any people with skullets anymore. There's no famous skullets.
Devin Townsend shaved it, so now we got nobody.
I guarantee you there's like a little subsect of character actors in Hollywood that had a meeting. And we're like, we are the 10 guys that are not getting hair plugs, right? They're going to need somebody.
Yeah. Clint Howard is Reggie. Yes. So tall man, alien. We go forward in time to this post-apocalyptic 1998. It's bad shit, Future Mike tells Reggie. Future Mike has been leading a band of survivors in the fight against the tall man for 10 years, while Reggie, in this version, has been God knows where. Because in Ravager, he's had his head between two forks and been in a coma. I don't think that's in here at all. I think he goes into the forks and we see him 10 years later. So Future Mike, Reggie, and the Freedom Fighters are attacked by a red sphere, which I wish we could have gotten more. I love it.
Yep.
I always, when I see the gold sphere and the red sphere, I think of like your Ninja Turtles beat 'em up, where like the Foot Clan, like this guy is wearing a white uniform, so that's how you automatically know you got to punch him a couple extra times.
It's like Streets of Rage. We just reskin and recolor.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I point out just like a goosebumps moment for me in five, or like the scene of Reggie in the wheelchair, nurse comes up and says, "Hey, you have a visitor." And Mike just sort of subtly walks up and like the lean over, like, "We gotta go."
Yep.
I love that. That is such like a one thing about Ravager that I think they executed really well.
Yeah,
and
that's
I just
why
love
I put it so
seeing
high, because it has the emotional core.
Yeah.
But you don't get to see hardly any of that in this.
Yeah.
I love Reggie standing in the yard, and all of a sudden he's seeing what's possibly really there. All that stuff is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All the nurses passing blame.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Reggie has a bunch of flashbacks. He and Mike exit the building. They're hiding in to face off with the tall man one last time. A member of Future Mike's Freedom Fighter team, who Bones referred to was once a character, is now just some guy in this edit, who is Chunk.
Yeah.
Dude pulls a Chao Tzu from Dragon Ball Z and suicide bombs the tall man as Reggie and Future Mike escape into a nearby pair of dimensional forks. But Reggie is the only one that makes it through, and he's back in 1998. He's on his deathbed while old Mike and somehow alive old Jody hold his hands and see him through to the other side. Reggie dies, and we flash back to 1979. Child Mike is riding alongside Reggie in the ice cream truck. They hear a disembodied voice say, "I'm dying, Reg," which I don't know where that comes from. I couldn't place that.
Is it Mike saying it?
I guess it has to be.
Because it would make sense almost if it was Jody more than Mike.
Yeah, just something with the way it was with the mixing. Like I couldn't
couldn't tell who said it.
Whose voice it was. But after that, Reggie asks, "Did you hear something?" And Child Mike responds, "Just the wind. It's just the wind." Roll credits. Phantasm revision. So, initial thoughts.
It's fun. It's a fun watch. If you're a fan of Phantasm, it's a frustrating watch at times. But getting to see like a cool guy's thoughts on here's some of my favorite parts of Phantasm and I kind of made them work together as a story. Hell yeah. Sometimes you just want you want a clip show, and it's slightly more than a clip show. Considerably more, I would say. And it's just fun to be able to look at it in a different way. And the scenes being cut the way they are, like you get different context for them. I don't hate it. I don't think I'll watch it again soon, but I don't think I'll never watch it again.
Yeah, it has like a Metallica S&M vibe to it, right? It's
okay, all right.
kind of a best of reinterpretation.
And it has no leaf clover?
Yeah, and human. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
There's an element, there's a charm to it of, man, I'd like to watch Phantasm, but I like 1. I really like 4. Which one do I pick? Do I want to commit to the whole thing? There's a benefit of, I got this bad boy, let me throw this on 90 minutes. And you kind of get to relive everything. Like you said, sometimes you love a clip show, right? And it got my juices charged. Like I'm sitting here thinking, damn, I don't necessarily want to like pitch a remake of this as fun as it is to talk about like who would we cast and what would we do. It's making me go, damn, I wish 3 opened with Tim. I wish the first 20 minutes was Tim.
Yeah.
You know, shit like that. So I think it has a net positive. Do I think it totally makes narrative sense? No, not really. You have to be familiar with the franchise to get it. So
yeah, I had a rough time with this, and I'm glad that both of you seem to enjoy it more than I did.
I'm not mad at you for asking me to see this.
Well, I'm glad.
It was a great time, and I was looking for any reason to read through more of this, the fiction book. And I
mean, I don't think I was able to glean any more clarity on the actual plot of Phantasm. And I don't think that this edit really pulled out any new plot threads that weren't already there.
Sure. It's just fun for my insane theories to see these scenes in a different way, you know?
Yeah.
I would say the thing I miss the most probably is if you're going to have all this Reggie, but we don't put the demon cop in, what are we doing?
Was that not in the greatest
You see a brief flash of it, and you see him go into the trunk and the head is in there. But that's it. You see a brief 20 seconds, if that, 10 seconds maybe, and that's just a shame.
Yeah, cut out the bandits with Tim and put more of that scene in, because, I mean, we'll have a man on fire stunt.
It's a great stunt, too. Yeah. It really is.
I think my main issue with this was probably just my own expectations. I think going into it, I thought that it would be like a re-edit that sort of clarifies and focuses the plot of the 5 films.
That's what you want.
Same.
Yeah, I totally thought so, too. Yeah.
I thought that it would probably be edited in such a way that maybe the story would be altered by the edit, but it would make more sense than the 5 of them. I was wrong about that.
I just don't think that was his intention. I just don't think that was his intention at all.
He said in a Q&A, "For many years, I wanted to re-edit a franchise into a single visceral experience. And it wasn't until I saw all the Phantasm films that I realized that it could be done. I've always wanted to see a film where the actors actually age, but not just age a couple years. I want to see a real child become an adult within the film's 89-minute length, which is Boyhood.
Right. But also then you're messing with the timeline where you're jumping back and forth all the time. It's like you didn't really deliver that.
So I guess on that front, he was successful because you do get to see the actor's age, but at the same time, I don't think anything is really gained in seeing them age over 89 minutes as opposed to 5 movies, because you still get to see them age.
Yeah.
I don't know.
For sure.
I mean, I think my other issue is that it is more confusing than just watching 5 movies.
You take away a lot of the context. You're right. It's baffling at times.
It's an impressive feat.
I guess one of the coolest things that he did is work around the recasting of Mike. He does a pretty good job of like being able to show you some Phantasm too.
Yeah.
And work around that. You get some wide shots. You get some shots where it's just Reg or whatever. Some of it's in there, but you do lose a lot of the fun of too, which is a bummer.
I think I just fall on the side of, I think he worked around it by excising almost all of it.
Yes, for sure. But I think he did a good job with what he could show.
Yeah.
So
I think maybe he was like really trying to amp up the dreamlike quality of the franchise by, he takes the timeline jumping, which is for the most part only a part of Ravager, and he kind of turns that up to 11. But for me, at a certain point, it got to be too much. It comes off less as dreamlike and more just, like we've said, greatest hits compilation.
mm-hmm.
I think what I personally look for in something like this is something that makes me look at the material through a different lens. And for me, it just didn't really recontextualize the originals in any way. I don't know.
Well, let me throw this at you real quick just to get this out of the way, because I've been talking about this crazy theory, right? The theory that I kind of came up with is, what if it's a single time loop and the tall man is constantly fucking with it? And he's going back, he's taking Mike, putting Mike in different places in time. That's why you see him in the Civil War. That's why you see him in the 70s. That's why you see him later. He's dropping him in these other times. And what he's trying to do is I got Dune on the brain, just like Coscarelli, but they are trying to make the Kwisatz Haderach, right? They're trying to make this man who can be many places at once. And other things later in the Dune books, which if people haven't read them, I don't want to spoil it for you, but there's another character that goes through many, many iterations with a final result of something. And when you start to see Mike gaining the telekinesis, and gets these metal eyes, and he starts to become aware of things, like he sort of has like another sense almost. It almost is like he's refining Mike. He is using the time, and he's doing something and taking that ball and putting it in him again. Okay, this is the data I have. I'm going to stick it in you. I'm going to put you in the Civil War, and then when I'm done with that one, I'm going to put you here and whatever. I don't know. I don't have the specifics. But it's like
selectively breeding a Kwisatz Haderach through
100%
many timelines using these spheres.
Well, my thought was like maybe it's one timeline, and he just keeps going back and starting over. And another thing I wanted to point out was that I love, and this isn't part of that really, but I love when it's near the end, when Mike stabs him with the ball on the head and then he blows up, and then the other tall man comes out of the forks, and that look he gives when he comes in and he kind of looks around like trying to figure out what exactly is going on. He's taking in the scene. It doesn't look like it's like a look like he's like, hey, look, are you surprised that I'm here? It looks more of I'm trying to assess what's going on. Almost as if, to me, that kind of proves the tall man, they're independent from each other. So you have multiple tall men, hundreds of thousands apparently.
Yeah.
That might not necessarily have the same goals, or they're not the same. They don't share a consciousness. I don't know if that even matters, but I guess the thought is like he's sort of a hive mind and there's all these and they're being controlled. But I think it's interesting to think that the tall man is all these different timelines, or even just the one loop, just like fucking around with time and putting balls in people's heads and being a nightmare creature.
Yeah. It's God. It's
I know I sound insane. I'm sorry.
you don't. The movies sound insane.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make sense of a senseless thing.
Right.
I have the same problem, but I'm trying to be restrictive with it because I'm putting too much of what I want it to have been. I want it to lean more into a weird dimensional planetary slave labor like thing, and this young kid just happened to spoil it enough, so he's the thing that's fucking up the tall man, whereas Reggie is just the soldier on the ground dealing with that. And for the most part, that's what it is. But when you throw in these little things, and the problem just is with the timeline of the franchise production as a whole affects that. So as much as I want to think, well, maybe it's this, I have to then ask myself, well, is that through the filter of what I want it to have been?
Well, if you think about, don't forget, when I was on 5 Day Rentals and we talked about Ravager, that was kind of one of my like sales pitches for the franchise. It really can be, you can take what you want. I mean, there's so much stuff that contradicts itself. It's fun to just think about it. It's fun to experience it over. It's fun to come up with a new theory. That's why I wanted to come up with a new theory. It's just like a fun thing to do. I love watching these movies and just thinking about what it could be because there's no clear answer.
Yeah.
That's why Phantasm rules.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we were talking about earlier, I don't know why that doesn't piss me off, but somehow it doesn't.
Yeah. Have you guys, surely you have, you've had an experience. We're at the age where we would watch television weekly, and then we transitioned to be able to binge it via DVD or streaming releases or whatever. For context, Community is probably one of my all-time favorite shows. It's a show that I managed to watch from premiere. I would watch every episode day of or next day, and I followed that through its ups and downs. Harmon being fired, the weird gas leak season 4, its return to, through 5, the Yahoo season. Loved it. A few years ago, binged it all with my wife as like, this would explain a lot about me if you were to watch this with me. When it is super condensed, it is much easier to see the cracks. And so to your point, I totally agree. I think I agreed with you on the episode that, Phantasm as a franchise, you can pick your own little story and build it within that. This is what he had. This is what he ended up. Obviously, he made some narrative decisions to do that. I do think, unfortunately, pushing it all together has the inverse effect where I think, I now see all of the faults. It's kind of a bummer, Joel McHale shouldn't have got that big. He should be fit. He should be doing keto, but he shouldn't be massive. It's contrary to the character. It's Donald Glover. He got too confident. It fucked him up. Childish Gambino kind of throws it off. You see that when it's condensed, but when it's spread out and you have time to breathe and you can think about it in between episodes or entries in the franchise, I think it's a little bit more forgiving.
Yeah,
I gotta agree.
And it's something I try to explain to people that I don't think I can never quite articulate it correctly, but there is something to be said about just growing up in that time, like the delayed gratification and like how you would have an issue of Nintendo Power and there would just be like 5 sentences about some game. Who knows when it's going to come out, if it ever does. It's like almost the most fun thing about childhood was thinking about when is that going to come out and like how great it's going to be.
And back then, you didn't have the internet. You didn't know when. And then you'd be in a store and it would be on the fucking shelf.
Yeah.
That moment when you go, oh my God, there it is. It's coming home. I can't wait.
So on the one hand, if I had been of age, like cognizant enough to know that this was coming out as it was released, I think, yes, I would have probably had a lot of fun. Like, oh, 3 just dropped and I got to wait 5 years. And for those 5 years, I'm just thinking about it in my head. There's no one's talking about this online. I'm coming up with my own shit. It would have been a lot of fun. But then I also understand, on the other hand, like, you've spent so much time thinking about it. That's probably why people hate Ravager so much.
You just described the Star Wars thing for me, because we grew up in a time when there were 3 Star Wars movies.
Mm-hmm.
You spent so much time thinking about it. And sure, there were the Expanded Universe books, which I read a lot of, but a lot of it is just in your head. A lot of it is just like, I am sure these are how the characters would be. This is how they would be in my head. I'm thinking of this and that, and it all is a certain way. And then Phantom Menace comes out and you're like, this isn't what I thought at all. Like, what's happening, you know?
You fucking cheered when Duel of the Fates started playing and the door opened up and he fucking ignites a double-bladed lightsaber.
Listen, I watched the trailer so many times. I loved it. I mean, I was a believer, but I do remember I was in Taekwondo at the time. And I went to see the movie before a practice? What do you call Taekwondo? Before a training session? What do you call a Taekwondo session?
Before you do your kata?
Sparring session?
I don't know. It was just like a session. All right. I went to see the movie before a session, and the guys in there were like, "Oh, how was it? How was the new Star Wars?" And I was like, I think I liked it, but like it didn't really feel like Star Wars. And I remember like them laughing at me, and they were wrong.
You're just wise beyond your years, because we're probably about the same age, and I was just mesmerized.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I was into it. I was super into it. Darth Maul. I had a Darth Maul poster before the movie even came out.
Hell
Loved
yeah.
it. And a Jar Jar poster, I'll admit it.
Hey, Jar Jar, to bring it back to something, to tie this all together with Phantasm and talking about J.J. Abrams earlier. And
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the reason that this got a 4K restoration. And if you remember back 2016, there were not a lot of films that had gotten that treatment. Like,
It was a big deal.
is a huge fan of this and did the soundtrack to Alien Factor. So that's where that little... And he was probably like 15 when that came out.
How amazing is that? Well, also in Star Wars, Captain Phasma has the chrome armor, which is a reference to Phantasm.
And I can definitely understand why he would love this so much. He was probably like the same age as Mike. They're probably the same age. And you got to think back to 1979. There's not a lot of like movies like Phantasm that are kid centered without being childish. And so I think I probably resonated with him a lot. So,
well, and the mystery of it all, like I remember that, I think it's probably pretty famous, the J.J. Abrams talking about the mystery. Is it a mystery box thing? Have you guys seen that?
Yeah.
That's what Phantasm is. The whole movie's like a mystery box.
That's what I'm saying.
You don't really,
People
that's
shit
what
on
I'm
him
saying.
for it, but we love Phantasm for it. So what's the difference? Is something
Coscarelli rules.
that could be it. I haven't been able to
Coscarelli
figure it
factor.
out.
We love Phantasm, but we get to the end and there is a little bit of right into Phantasm 4. We say like that would have been a great ending to that. That's a good cap. I think our problem with J.J. Abrams is you can only do so much mystery while continuing like snowballing mystery. Then it just it becomes exhausting.
Yep.
Speaking for myself as a, lost one-time fan.
Yep.
Somehow the tall man returned.
But that literally happens. You must understand that literally he throws the other one just through the thing, like, oh, throw that one away. He's dead.
Somehow.
It's incredible. Just a new one just shows up. And I love that. But in any other thing, you're right. That would be the most frustrating thing of all time. We did all this work to stop the tall man. And then another one just shows up. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm delighted when I see this for the first time.
Yeah. And I think one of the things we didn't talk about that much is how funny a lot of these movies are. And it took me like 4 or 5 watches of the first Phantasm to really get that, instead of like seeing it through the lens of this is low budget, like these are bad performances. I don't know why I didn't pick up on Jodie closing the box and saying, "Oh, okay, I believe you.
I believe you."
Like, that's funny. That's supposed to be funny, and it is.
It's really good.
And it's satisfying. They can be both. They can exist together, You make an excellent point about it's a kid protagonist who you root for, but it's not childish.
Yeah.
Can you think of any other ones like that?
Not from before this. No.
Yeah.
Because I think, making movies for kids was not even really a concept back then. And this wasn't made for kids, but by its nature, it's every kid that goes and sees this is going to relate to it.
Well, again, we know Coscarelli was very young when he made it. So I think him having that perspective, that absolutely has to inform why this is the way it is and maybe why it works.
Yeah. And one of the things I picked up when I watched this a few years ago that you guys mentioned when you were talking about is that this is like such an A24 movie where it's just like weird shit happens and it's about grief and trauma.
Yeah.
Like that, the first movie is totally that. And that's another thing. Like, I kind of fucking hate those movies, but it works here.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know what it is.
Because it's not exhausting. I think a modern grief tale, it's too somber and exhausting. And if I'm already feeling grief and I need relief, I don't want to sit for 2 hours and feel that and then get a little cathartic 5-minute button.
Know what? I've absolutely started to go, is this a grief one? I can't do this right now. Legitimately, a couple times recently, I've been like, I cannot do a grief right now. I can't do it.
Yeah, we talk often about like tension and terror. Like if you're setting out to, this is just going to be tension, slow burn all the way. If you can commit and execute it, I'm all for it. But I much more prefer tension with a little bit of break to a big buildup in the slow burn context. And this isn't a slow burn. I mean, it's you get
it delivers
weird.
Constantly.
It rolls over itself. Here's a goofy finger. Here's a naked chick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Keep you engaged.
Well, not to put too fine a point on it, but I think it's safe to say we all love Phantasm to some degree.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts on this revision before we move forward?
I would say check it out. If you've seen all 5 and maybe you need a little bit of a refresher, throw it on. It'll spark some inspiration like it did for DK, and you'll think, wow, maybe the next time I go through it, I can look through this lens. It scratches the Phantasm itch, but if you're truly trying to get a particular vibe, I would say, pick out your favorite of the franchise instead. So,
yeah, Bones, absolutely agree with everything you're saying. It is, like I said, it's sort of a clip show situation, but not one that fans will dislike, I think. Like I said, it can be frustrating, but if you're just looking to kind of get the Phantasm vibes and you kind of want to see moments from all of them that are great, this is a good way to do it. I don't know how available this actually is for people, but I did not hate watching it, and I watched it a couple times. So, there's something there. And if nothing else, I like what it makes me think about. I like that it kind of gets my wheels turning, and I go, well, what would I do? How would I stick 1 and 4 together? Whatever it is. But yeah, I think it has value, and I'm glad we got to watch it for sure.
Yeah, I applaud Mr. Torres for. He's obviously a huge fan of all these movies. You don't spend the amount of time he had to have spent doing this if you don't care about Phantasm.
Well, and can I say the editing was excellent?
Yeah, that is one thing that I feel like we probably should highlight is that the choices of scenes may have rubbed us the wrong way in certain parts, but the editing itself is good.
Did you notice any bad edits? Like, I didn't notice any weird transitions, really. Nothing too jarring. No, because like a lot of times in these fan edits, you get like music that doesn't match up with the scenes and all that stuff. But he did a really good job with that stuff.
Mm-hmm. No, I didn't notice anything. And as I mentioned, he is a filmmaker. He's directed a few shorts and a feature length. He does his own editing on those. And I think it shows in this Phantasm revision.
He's obviously an excellent editor. No question.
I want to seek out his other edits for sure.
A Death
There's an
Wish.
Evil Dead one, right?
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, I don't think I mentioned that, but I think there is.
What do you do with that? You just stick. Do you stick one on the? Do you mess with one, or just do you start with two?
Cut off one and then just glue 2 and 3 end to end.
Well, I guess you could have one happen, and then you cut off the first 10, 15 minutes of Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
Right? That's the way you do it.
You could also edit 1 and 2 together to just, because 2 is kind of a remake, but with a higher budget.
Right.
Maybe.
We have to end up with a portal to the medieval times. So we have to, as long as we end up there, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think like if you, and I know this is what I'm talking about right now is a completely different discussion, but you could do, cut the beginning off of Evil Dead 2 and then basically have it like Ash is already there. He's tried to escape the cabin. He has failed to escape the cabin. And then, Bobby Joe and the rest show up and he has to deal with all that.
I'll tell you, my fan edit of Evil Dead is Army of Darkness in its entirety and nothing else.
Do you have a preferred version of that or a preferred ending?
So I think it's the ending that I have seen most recently is the one where he goes into a cave. I think it's been a long time since I've seen, because that's not the original ending,
no.
is it?
Well, it is the original ending, but it's not the theatrical.
It has been a long time since I've seen the theatrical because for whatever reason, all the DVDs I could find were the cave ending. So I don't even remember what it is.
Okay, well, I'll tell you this. The theatrical ending is great. He's in S-Mart, and a demon shows up, a Deadite shows up, and you get an awesome line from Bruce Campbell of, "Lady, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave the store." And she's like bouncing on a trampoline, and he's blasting her. And it's got a nice little button where he does get to say that he does the Hail to the King again. It's worth looking at if you haven't in a while. But that is another movie with like a cool amount of alternate scenes or alternate endings where you can kind of play with that and put different versions together. There's different lines of good, bad, I'm the guy with the gun. He has some alternate lines there that are pretty cool. Evil Dead rules.
Yeah. DK, when we were messaging back and forth, you said something about a Batman edit, which is the audio from the Batman over the animated series.
That's what I read that it was, and I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Absolutely intrigued. I watched like a little teaser of it, and it like totally worked. It absolutely made sense.
Okay.
So we gotta find it. We gotta find a way to get it.
I'll find it for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for going through this with me. But before we get out of here, we'll lighten the mood a little bit. I have a little game for you boys that I like to call "Did They Die in a Car Wreck?" I'll say the name of a famous person.
Shit.
You guys buzz in by calling out your name, and you have to tell me, did this person die in a car wreck? So, pretty simple rules, right?
Yes.
Okay. First one, Sam Kinison.
Bones.
He
did not die in a car wreck.
Sorry, he died in a car wreck.
What?
He did.
Was it coke fueled?
No, unfortunately, he was sober and killed by a drunk driver.
Jesus Christ.
The irony of it all.
Oh.
No points on the board. Tippi Hedren. Did she die in a car wreck?
DK.
Go ahead.
She did not die in the car wreck.
That's correct. She's still alive.
Damn it. Good job.
General George S. Patton.
DK.
Bones.
I heard DK first.
I heard,
He did die in a car wreck.
Yes, he did. So that's 2 points, DK, 0 points, Bones.
Hey, thanks for reminding me.
Sonny Bono.
Bones.
Bones.
Ski accident.
Yes, skiing.
Yep. Absolutely.
2-1. Tennessee Williams.
DK. Did not die in a car accident.
Correct. He choked on the cap from a bottle of eye drops.
I'm sorry to laugh at that,
Yeah.
but what the fuck?
3-1 in favor of DK. Mark Bolan.
Bones. Yes.
Yes, he died in a car wreck. You guys know who that is, right? Singer of T-Rex?
Yes.
Okay. I probably should say these things, so Sonny Bono is not a current reference that people know.
Shout out to Laundry Dan for informing that for me.
Okay. Next one. Barbara Eden, Jeannie from I Dream of Jeannie.
DK?
DK.
Yes, she died in a car accident.
She's still alive.
Fuck!
Next one. Paul Walker.
Bones.
Bones.
To be fair, DK was drinking.
That's my fault.
Okay.
You get it.
Yes, he did die in a car wreck.
R.I.P. Paul Walker. We still miss you. Last one. So that's 3-2, right?
I thought it was 3-3.
Okay, we'll go with 3-3.
maybe.
I got T-Rex and Bono.
We'll go with 3-3
Okay.
to make things interesting because this is the last one. Macho Man Randy Savage.
DK.
DK.
I believe that he had a heart attack while driving. So yes, he died in a car accident.
Macho Man did die in a car wreck.
But he had a heart attack. He had a heart attack.
But he was in a car accident. He was in the car. He was driving, I think.
I guess the language is he died in a car wreck,
Yeah,
not
it's a
because
technicality.
of a car wreck.
It's a technicality.
Because even if Jody died in a car wreck, it was probably because of the tall man.
I thought it was an STD. Yeah, maybe an STD from the lady tall man.
He was scratching.
Got the fastest case of syphilis ever recorded.
Wow.
So yeah, that was I will.
Great job, DK.
You're the
Great game.
champ. I'm kind of relieved that you won because I'm going to send you out a prize, and I know that Bones despises all physical objects of any sort. So
Thank you.
it's a lot easier to think of something to send you than the guy that hates physical media.
Hate physical media. Come on.
I've heard it told that way.
I just think we need to grow as a species. That's all.
I agree with you. So that was a Phantasm revision. I'm pretty burnt out on Phantasm at this point, but thank you guys for coming on and breathing life into this dead format with me. And please take this opportunity to tell the fine folks out there where they can find you and anything you've got in the works.
Well, I have a music project called Home is Midnight. We have an album coming out. There have been some delays. We're trying to get it out this October, but if it's not October, I think it'll be November. It will be, I think, before the end of the year. It's like electronic stuff, like what if John Carpenter was a little poppier and sucked? And we've got female vocals. It's actually pretty, I really like it. So we actually have a song in the upcoming movie Ghost Game, directed by Jill G, who did she did the movie The Stylist. So look forward to hearing us in that movie. Oh my God, that's amazing. We just found out that comes in October. And one more thing for me. I do have a solo electronic project where it's sort of like retro horror / video gamey / sort of synth stuff. And my most recent release was a Phantasm themed EP. So I feel I should probably bring that up. It's at dkreft.bandcamp.com, or you can just search for DKREFFT on like Spotify, anywhere you listen to music. It's on there. The cover is like a hand holding a sphere. You'll know.
Beautiful. Bones?
I should have gone first. You can find me weekly on the 5 Day Rentals podcast. And also, I'm going to be building a shed in the coming weeks. I'm looking forward to that. So, if you're a Psycho fan and you've, figured out my location on Google Maps, when that refreshes in a few months, you might see the shed on there.
Are you going to do like videos on how you did it?
No, I can't tell you how many
As
times.
you go?
I can't tell you how many times I got to tell my wife, like, I don't need a photo. I don't need to record this. I don't need.
You do, so you can remember what it was before, and then look how good it is now. You finished it.
She loves that shit.
She'll right.
She'll come out and say, "Did you take photos?" I said, "No. My phone's only here so I can listen to a podcast."
That's fair.
Still waiting on those videos of you tearing down buildings.
The bummer is I inherited a yard without a shed. Had there been a shed, I would have shot a pilot of Bones Escapes, or as a working title, you know. I just want to say both of you have appeared on 5-Day Rentals. We always love having you. We have to restrict how often we want to nag you and have you on. And DK does our music, so if you need another taste of his beautiful tunes, check us out on 5D.
Yeah. Well, I'm the solo host of this podcast, so my restriction of me asking you guys to be on is going to be when you tell me to fuck off. So
Is this a good time to slip in that I think Pin was getting revenge? That's all I'm going to say.
yes, absolutely he was. It's in the book.
Yep.
Book is not a movie. Okay.
A book is a movie that stays, to sort of halfway quote The Dark Crystal.
God damn it.
And fade out.
Another puppet movie. So yeah, on behalf of Bones and DK, I'm Chris. This has been Dead Formats. If you have any questions about the show, or if you have a dead format topic that you'd like to hear me cover, or if you have any suggestions for potential guests, please reach out. You can email me at deadformatspod@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on Instagram at deadformatspod. Thanks for listening.